At what point does a podcast become a business? Is it when you form an LLC? When you get your first sponsor? When you quit your day job? When you hit 10,000 downloads? Most creators think that there's a moment when the switch flips, but there usually isn't. In fact, if your podcast has created opportunities or income or obligations for you, then you probably are already running a business without even realizing it. And if that is true, you may also have legal, financial, and operational issues you haven't even thought about yet. So today, let's figure out where the line really is. Welcome to Legit Podcast Pro. I'm Gordon Firemark, entertainment attorney, educator, and known as the podcast lawyer. Now, last week's episode, we talked about something I think a lot of creators overlook. Your podcast isn't just creating episodes, but it's actually creating assets, trust, audience share, brand recognition, intellectual property, authority, relationships, opportunities. And I suggested something that may have sounded a little bit strange to you, and that's that the podcast isn't the asset. No, the podcast is the machine that creates the assets. So today, I want to take the next logical step. At what point do those assets add up to become a business? Because here's what I've noticed after representing lots of creative creative entrepreneurs for more than 30 years. Very few people wake up one morning and decide, hey, today I'm starting a business. Instead, what they do, at least in this arena, is publish content, and then someone asks them to consult with them, or a sponsor approaches them about advertising, or they approach a sponsor about advertising. A listener hires them to do some work for them. They launch a course, or hire an editor, or bring on a virtual assistant, and before they know it, they're operating something much larger than what they ever intended or set out to start. Now, the problem is that many creators continue thinking like hobbyists long after they have really become business owners. And that disconnect can become very expensive very fast. So let's talk about the myth of the business switch. I hear versions of this all the time. When should I form an LLC? When do I need contracts? When should I trademark my show? When should I get a business insurance policy? Notice the pattern? Every one of those questions assumes that there's some magical moment when your podcast suddenly becomes a business. But that is not usually how it works. Think about a child growing taller. You don't notice it from day to day, but someone who hasn't seen that child in 6 months notices right away. Businesses grow the same way. Small changes accumulate. One opportunity leads to another. One relationship creates another. And a revenue stream suddenly becomes 3 or 5. Eventually, you're looking around and you realize you're coordinating people, managing money, fulfilling obligations, making business decisions. You didn't flip a switch. You crossed a series of small thresholds. Maybe you accepted your first sponsorship, or someone bought your online course. Maybe you earned affiliate income. Maybe listeners started hiring you, or you hired someone to edit your show. Maybe you created a membership community. Well, each of those moments changed things just a little in your business. No single one transformed anything or everything, but together they created a business. I can certainly relate. Hey, when I started Entertainment Law Update, my flagship podcast back in 2009, my goal wasn't to build a creator business. I wanted to have interesting conversations about entertainment law with my friend Tamara Bennett. That was mainly it. And I knew it would be good for my law practice, but then something interesting happened. Clients started mentioning the podcast when we would have our consultations. Conference organizers began inviting me to come and speak. Schools asked me to teach, and I wrote books. I created online courses and built legal template libraries. I started coaching creators, and I launched Legit Podcast Pro, my second podcast, this one. Each opportunity grew out of the previous. Not because I had a brilliant master plan all along, but because the content kept creating new opportunities. One relationship led to another, each conversation spurring on the next one. And eventually I realized the podcast isn't my business. It's one of the engines that drives my business. And that is true for many, many creators. Your podcast may not be the destination. It may be the vehicle. So here are 5 signs that you are already running a business. This is how you know, how you recognize when you've crossed that invisible line. 5 signs. Sign number 1, people are paying you. Now, I don't care whether it's $5 or $500 or $500,000. Money changes the conversation. sponsors, affiliate commissions, memberships, courses, coaching, consulting, advertising, live events, products. If someone is paying for the value that your content creates, you're doing business. Sign number 2, you've built assets worth protecting. We talked about those hidden assets in our last episode: your audience, your brand, your reputation, your content library, sure, your website, your email list, your domain names, trademarks. So here's a simple test. If you lost one of those things tomorrow, would it hurt? Would your business suffer? If the answer is yes, then you are already managing business assets. Now, sign number 3 is that other people are depending on you. Maybe you have an editor, a producer, a writer, a co-host, a virtual assistant, a graphic designer, a researcher, a sponsor, a customer, a client, a community of paying members. The moment other people begin relying on you, you are managing relationships that deserve clarity. That's why contracts, agreements matter. Clear expectations are important. Communication is essential. And sign number 4 is that you are making promises. Every business makes promises. Maybe it's just we publish on Tuesdays. Our members receive bonus content, or sponsors receive 2 mid-roll ads. Clients receive monthly strategy calls. Those promises become part of your reputation, and your reputation is one of the most valuable assets you will ever build. And sign number 5 is that mistakes have consequences. If you miss an episode, maybe the audience is merely disappointed. But if you miss a sponsored episode, now you've breached a contract. If a contractor claims ownership of your logo, that becomes a business problem. If someone accuses you of copyright infringement, that too is a business problem. If someone else registers your brand before you do, big business problem. The stakes change. That's why businesses use contracts. They protect their trademarks and register their copyrights. It's why they carry insurance and separate their business finances from the personal stuff. It's not because lawyers enjoy paperwork. It's because valuable assets deserve protection. So start thinking like an owner. Over the years, I've noticed something interesting. Creator businesses tend to evolve through recognizable stages. At first, you're just creating. You're trying to make things better content. You're finding your voice, growing your audience, and then something changes and revenue starts to show up. Sponsors, clients, courses, affiliate income, speaking engagements. Now you're becoming a professional creator. And then another shift happens. You start building systems, hiring help, protecting your intellectual property, creating repeatable processes, managing assets instead of simply creating content. That's when you're running a creator-driven business. Some businesses continue growing, multiple shows, multiple channels, teams, licensing, products, partnerships. And others intentionally stay small. And both of those approaches are perfectly valid. Success is not determined by size. It's determined by intentionality, by knowing where you are, knowing where you're headed, and making decisions that support those goals. One mistake I see all the time is creators worrying about tomorrow's problems while ignoring today's. Someone wants to know whether they should form an LLC, but they haven't yet even locked in ownership of their brand. Or they want to negotiate a sponsorship, but they don't have basic agreements with their own team. Someone is obsessed with their download numbers, but they're neglecting the audience relationships that actually create long-term value, the audience they already have. Once you know what stage you're in, the next decisions actually get a lot easier. So that's why I'm building something new that I'm really excited about. It's called the Creator Business Protection Blueprint. And it's designed to help creators identify where they are today, recognize the assets they've already built, and understand the legal and business foundations they need for the next stage of growth. Now, you can learn more about that right off the bat at gordonfiremark.com/blueprint. This is not something up and running yet, but you'll be joining a early notification list, I guess I'd call it. And I'm looking forward to sharing much more about it in the months ahead. So before we finish, I would like you to do a simple exercise. Just write down every way that your content creates value today. Every revenue stream, every opportunity, every important relationship, every asset, every responsibility. Don't just think about the podcast. Think about everything that your podcast has made possible. And look at that list. Ask yourself the question, does this look like a hobby? Or does it look like a business? I suspect many of you will discover that you are much farther along than you ever realized. And once you recognize that, you can begin building intentionally instead of accidentally. And if you're looking for lawyer-drafted contracts, releases, agreements, and legal templates created specifically for creators and creator businesses, head on over to podcastlawforms.com. These are the same kinds of documents I use every day to help my clients protect the businesses they've worked so hard to build. And if you would like to discover what stage your creator business is in and learn how to protect and grow the assets you're building, head on over there to get a look at that blueprint as soon as it's ready. GordonFiremark.com/blueprint. I would love to have you join me as we build this new resource together. Next time, we're going to tackle what I believe is one of the biggest mistakes creator businesses make. They spend years producing content and almost no time intentionally building those assets. And that one mistake can dramatically limit growth, reduce the value of the business, and make it much harder to scale. We'll talk about all of that and how to avoid it in the next episode. But until then, keep on creating, keep on building. And remember, you may not have set out to build a business, but if your content is making value for other people, well, there's a very good chance you're already running a business. I'll see you next time. Have a great one.